Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Brahmanandam Param Sukhadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Gagan Sadrisham Tattvamasyaadi Lakshyam Ekam Nityam Vimalamacha Sarvadhi Sakshi Bhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami. Om. Adorations to Sadguru, who is Brahman, the giver of supreme bliss, embodiment of pure consciousness, one without a second, vast as the ether, infinite, eternal, beyond the three gunas and their modifications, the supreme preceptor. Yoga Vasistha, Sthiti Prakarana, and section, we are going towards the section 17. We have just concluded the story of sage Shukracharya. Just to give you just little essence. The story commenced with sage Bhrigu practice going deep into samadhi, and his son, young man, who was always serving his father, and both had wonderful, loving relationship. So when father is in deep samadhi, son continued his own way of practicing yoga, sadhana. And at one time, while he entered into meditation, suddenly his mind began to see a kind of a dream. He fell into the trap of mental world. You never know. When you are working with your mind, you will never know whether you are with your body or without the body. Who cares? See, I'm simply pointing out. Even the awareness, my body is meditating, and body is in a meditative pose, and I'm meditating. Both are from the mind. The body doesn't know anything. You have to study medical science. So, through his mind, now he entered into a world where he suddenly became fascinated by an apsara floating into the sky, going towards Indra's world. There are lots of dance and lots of good things to eat, lots of enjoyments. He pursued her there, and in spite of all the joys, etc., he and that apsara were in love with each other. And they, led by their good karma, they continue to enjoy the heavenly enjoyments. And after, because that's the predicament of everyone who goes to Swarga, the relative heaven, not the real one. The real one is moksha, liberation. But the Swarga aspect, also well known as bhoga. We use two terms, bhoga and moksha. Your good karmas have two fingers. They give you bhoga if you are not advanced enough. Moksha, liberation. If sattva, mode of sattva has not completely triumphed over rajas and tamas, then you stay with bhoga. In other words, after death, you enjoy intense pleasure. But then all that enjoyment is dependent upon the quantity of your good karma. And as it's exhausted, then you descend into the world. And then you continue the same. And this goes on. This is the realm of bhoga. If prosperous situation has inspired you to become really prosperous, inspired you to develop Davi Sampat, divine virtues, the type of wealth that you don't leave behind, you carry with you. Try to understand, it's allegorical language. If you are developing compassion, humility, and all those divine qualities, truthfulness, serenity, charity, and so forth, the divine virtues, then sattva now will lead you to an ascending steps to liberation, moksha. Now, in the story of Shukracharya, he had not attained that level of sattva. So he went on experiencing cycle of birth and death. All that went on through his mind while his body was there with sage Bhrigu. But Bhrigu didn't know he was there, close by. But after Bhrigu had gone through his own long duration of samadhi, he comes to normal consciousness and as usual looks for his son. He's supposed to be always there. I'm joking. But not finding him, he looks around and then he finds at the usual place where Shukracharya would sit, there is a skeleton infested with so many things. Little birds are there in the holes of his ears, little worms coming out of his nose, and so many crawling things into his bones, from toes to his head. But in spite of this terrible situation, he could recognize and come to understand that was his son. Immediately he became so angry, turned his anger on the time spirit, that aspect, that deity who is Yama, who is the ruler of birth and death. And Yama, time spirit, Yama has two synonyms, called Yama, Lord of Death, and Kala, time spirit. Time spirit gave insight into the fact that it was not his responsibility or his job to do anything that is not according to one's karma. Time spirit was only handling the divine plan of every soul must experience its karmic process. And Bhrigu comes to realize it and uses his own insight, and he is able to see how his beloved son Shukra has gone through so many embodiments. human embodiments, powerful embodiments of kings, most degraded embodiments, even of little trees and plants. But finally, while this talk was going on between Kala and Bhrigu, Shukracharya had incarnated as a Brahmin in a family dedicated to scriptural study and performance of worship. And his name was Vasudeva. And at that time, while the talk was going on between Kala and Bhrigu, Shukracharya was at the banks of a beautiful river practicing profound austerity. Summarizing the story, both go there where Vasudeva was practicing austerity, and he was awakened from his sadhana, and he recognizes his sage Bhrigu, and he sees Kala, and he offers adorations to them. And after this communication, Father says, according to the cosmic law, you have to play a role of leading the asuras, the negative forces, and putting them in line. So therefore, come to original place where the skeleton is. So they all fly back to their place in a mystical world. And there Shukracharya sees his own body. For the sake of spicing the story, he feels very miserable to see his body in such a state. But then, by divine law, under the divine plan, it is possible for him to leave his present body and enter into his real one, that was the son of Bhrigu. Things are not so real. And the scripture describes in a very literary way, a joyous way, how this skeleton suddenly becomes free from all those creatures. And we look at the skeleton, is about to laugh, as it were. but then flesh and blood comes in. He is not looking at the skeleton. He looking at the lips, looking at the nose. Eyes begin to flicker. I'm also spicy. The whole body comes, is revived by magic. And then Shukracharya comes up, gets up as if he had delayed, reverencing his father. Soon the body became well formed and consciousness returned to it. Having regained his previous body, Shukracharya stood up and adored his father with a voice as deep as a rumbling cloud. This is not to follow as an example, it's just allegorical. type of voice that brings nectarine rain, voice that brings great joy in the atmosphere. That type of voice, we describe it like the voice is as deep as a rumbling cloud. Who enjoys it? The peacock. Who is the peacock? Your own mind. Sage Bhrigu felt a new surge of affection as he embraced his son, though by his inward vision, this world was illusory. That's the simple insight being given, that for enlightened sages, external reality is handled that's extremely warm and cozy and beautiful and sweet, and it inspires people. The internal, mauna, absolute silence, eternity, and eternity has no tongue. But without tongue, eternity has mystic eloquence, song of eternity. Just giving you some imagination. In the course of time, Shukracharya accepted the role of becoming the preceptor of the Asuri race. And even now he continues to perform that role. Though performing this duty, Sri Shukracharya ever abides in the self and is ever detached from the world process. Section 17. Sri Rama asked, O sage, how is it that Shukracharya attained the object of his desire, while there are many who are unable to fulfill their desire? Now, subtle insight is being given in relation to the term desire. Every soul comes with desire, kama. More extended way called trishna, translated as thirst. Every soul is a dear one, it's a dear. But the deer of what gets deluded by Mriga-trishna, thirst, to quench the thirst. But then the deer doesn't know where to get that source that will quench the thirst. The soul doesn't have illumined vision. As long as the soul is not enlightened, it lacks illumined vision. Now the soul wants to be happy in the realm of mirage. And mirages are plenty. You work very hard to go into the mirage. You see water shimmering. And as deer goes into the water, very thirsty, and starts sipping it. But by this time, brain gets damaged. So even though the deer is not really sipping it, it imagines all the sweet tastes coming from the water. Ends up dead. Now coming back to more philosophical way of understanding desire, there are two causes for the fulfillment of a desire. First, chitta shuddhi, purity of chitta that enables a person to pursue one's object of desire with a one-pointed attention. One is the role of chitta shuddhi. Another is the role of prarabdha karma. Your personality is mixed up. Certain things happen in your life, led by your prarabdha karma, fructifying karma, karma that you generated in the past. You did it, but it is being fructified, it bringing the fruit at a time when you don't remember you were the one who did it, that you were responsible for it. So now things develop, happen according to your own desire, but that desire is now in the form of karma, led by your karma. And it can happen both ways. It can be according to your wishes. That means it may be prosperity, or it may be adversity. Prosperity comes, you didn't plan for it. Suddenly you won a lottery. What could you do? I'm joking. Similarly, things develop in your life for which there is no explanation in this life. It has come from the previous life. So that's called karmic process, karma. In the case of Shukracharya, he was able to follow the course of his desires because of his chitta shuddhi, purity of chitta, that he had acquired through his austerities. Even though he went through all that, the subtle point that is being given, that he attained success. There are people who go through all that and they don't succeed. But Shukracharya succeeded because the type of austerity he did was leading the mind to purity. But if you are doing austerity without sourced by satsanga, mind doesn't gain that purity and yet goes on holding desires. So without attaining purity of mind, the fulfillment of desire and desire itself, both are like a magic show. They are in the realm of illusion. Your desire itself is not real. Remember Narada's desire to become great personality, go viral in the universe. And Lord Vishnu gives him monkey face. He looks at himself and he finds he never looked that wonderful before. But the very look that gives him that idea, the look of a monkey. Monkey face. So what happens to desire if heart is not purified? If heart is not purified, or your sadhana is not leading to the degrees, ascending steps of purification, then the only solution is that you will come back again and again, the cycle of birth and death. As the mind increases in purity, it develops the ability of becoming modified into any object it thinks of with keen attention. This point will be understood with more insight into Raj Yoga. State of mind and the way you interact with objects and people around you. Everyone doesn't have the same state. The mind is mostly distracted in majority of people. So through a distracted state of mind, when you are looking at your relative, your son, daughter, husband, wife, whomsoever, you have already made up your mind what the person looks like, what the problem, with what problem the person has come to you. And even what the person has to say something, you have already the remedy. You are so loving, you want to free the person of the trouble immediately, like magic, without even having time to listen to and diagnose in a proper way. So in other words, you are not tuning to the person with whom you are interacting. When Chitta Shuddhi starts, you are more in tune than the other aspect of working with imaginations. So figure that out, what it means. And that's the quality of higher, profounder relationship. Raj Yoga uses the term samapatti. To put it in a simple way, if you place a flower before a crystal, transparent crystal, you don't see the crystal, you see the flower. Crystal and flower become one. But no matter how one both are, when flower moves away, crystal is crystal. Mind is able to handle every situation with keen attention, as if mind is completely inundated by it. But then it does not lose its quality of being detached. Thing moves away and not a trace there in your mind. That's the ideal of control of mind. And that's what we call purity of mind. Just as the surface of a lake is modified into waves through the action of wind, in the same way, the mind of a yogi assumes the form of any object through the force of his desires. In other words, his mind can understand all different minds and different personalities without being affected by them. And that's the great quality. If that is not there, then you will not be really serviceable to people. A doctor, if he becomes affected by the disease of the patient more than the patient is suffering, can't expect much from him. spiritual advancement implies you gain spiritual health, and at the same time you understand the people and how they are suffering because of that lack of that health. And with that insight, your attitude to people is based on compassion. The doctor goes into hospital and sees so many patients agitated, shouting at the doctor, condemning him, cursing him. Every little pain they have, they blame it on the doctor. Doctor listens. Instead of being upset, he understands that this is the symptom of the disease they are suffering from. And so he remains cool. The moral of that, that's the ideal one must work for. When you look at the world of positive people, negative people, complex people, and when you are constantly affected by them, influenced by them, no matter how things happen, the deep core ideal to understand that your attitude to be happy should not be confined just to yourself. Understand everybody should be happy. And that happiness is the only remedy for all the troubles of this world. If unhappy people have done something criminal, and now you keep the person intensely in that state of pain constantly, what have you done? You have not cured. Yes, from the point of view of the eyes of people, a criminal has been punished. He may be sentenced to death. But the crime he did, the soul that is there suffering from karma, is coming back. Not for you, but for your children, your coming generation. So you are not really curing it. Every soul experiences a world of its own according to the structure of the mind. But as the mind attains increasing degrees of purity, the soul experiences the spontaneity of fulfillment of all its desires. The ultimate realization, when the soul realizes, who am I? When a reflected sun realizes, I am the sun, then all its reality about how should I make friends with those reflected suns. And if those reflected suns flow through a deflected movement. I'm joking. All that problem, the countless problems, when you turn your attention to reflected sun, every little dewdrop comes with a shine. But all that remains transient. But at the same time, what is shining is the sun. And that sun has not undergone any change. It remains the same. So, similarly, the real I am is pure consciousness, light of lights. That light of lights never suffers. And that you must gain that insight. I am not the body, not the mind, etc. I am pure Chaitanya, pure consciousness. In this movement, as there is realization of who am I, whatever degree of you move towards it, to that extent, your desires begin to fade away. They are not satisfied in a worldly way, because satisfy a desire and desire outfoxes you. In the beginning, desire says, oh, you satisfied me. But wait, it's creating a longing for more. Dhyayato vishayan punsa. The more you think of objects, sangaste shupajayate, you become so dependent upon the objects that you can't live without them. You try to keep the objects or relatives as close to yourself, and so forth. Sangaste shupaja, sangat sanjayate kama. And this type of dependence on objects becomes the basis of desires. Now your desire is dependent upon those objects and how they are conducting themselves. But objects are not just material objects, human beings. You invite someone to stay with you forever. You love them. But that's your idea. How does the person will act? That you have no idea. And the person may feel as well deluded that a wonderful setting has come. Now, I'm talking about the world relations. You can get out of that type of relationship by developing purity of love. If you love to see each other becoming more spiritually drawn, develop love of God, Godward movement. If you can introduce that in yourself or in others, then you don't have to worry about what type of love am I practicing. That love is divine. But if you don't have that insight, then your love is moha. Moha based, you don't know anything about it. Cat is seated loving a rat. Rat looks at the cat. Oh, looks so motherly. But who knows? It can be true. Sometimes miracles happen. Just as a tree arises out of a tiny seed, so too, out of the seed of ignorance, the world tree arises in various forms. Yet in truth, this world tree is illusory. And through this realization, the very seed in the form of ignorance is destroyed. The role of desire. You may say, what's desire? Desire is just something little, the vast universe. But behind the vast universe, the seed is the desire. Your soul, led by desire, has gotten into this vast universe that has no end in the beginning, no end in future. And the multiplicity of things are beyond imagination. Desire-based movement, put it in an easier way to understand. The shining rays of the sun and little cloud, which consists nothing of but of vapor in a little condensed manner, which has no substance. That little cloud turns the rays of the sun into countless variations, first the major ones, the rainbow, but then there are countless variations. Just a little cloud. And when this enlightenment enters, the cloud begins to fade away. First it begins to shine. Same cloud that was obstructing the sun now begins to shine in a special way. Begins to let people see the sun more inspiring than before. Little cloud. That's the state of enlightened mind. And then it simply moves away. There's nothing but the sun. So that's the role of desire, that becomes like a little cloud and changes your entire vision. To give you more detail, we always talk about 7 chain of pain. Chain and pain, easy to remember. Most people have wonderful chains. But in his ignorance, the soul loves to put on the chain. 7 chains. The basic chain, the experience of pain, dukkha. What's the cause of dukkha, pain? Embodiment. As embodied, you are characterized by possessing a mind with desire. The cause of this embodiment is karma. And karma is caused by mind that is swaying between attachment and hatred, raga and dvesha. Mind that is not enjoying serenity. One foot is in raga, things you want to love. One thing is things that you want to hate. But sometimes the things you want to hate are so vast that your balance standing is lost. So float one way or the other way. Joking. But as long as there is raga dvesha, you are bound to create karmas. And karmas will give you embodiment, and embodiment will give you pain. But raga dvesha is not the end of it. Raga dvesha, attachment, hatred is caused by egoism, because your concept of your identity is in trouble. You don't really know whom you want to help. You simply know, yes, I want for myself. All the world is loved because of me. If I am not in me, then what's the use of world? But the I am your mind looking for is not real I am. Day by day, when you go to deep sleep, the ego I am is not there in your deep sleep state. Therefore, you don't have all the worries that you have of yesterday, today, tomorrow. Time itself evaporates. And you don't miss anything about it. The profoundest wisdom is given by divine plan to every individual. Just think of it. And how to capture that sleep-like peace, even while living in the world, facing your challenges, and being dynamic in your goodness. Goodness is like a flower. Dynamism is wafting with the fragrance. If flower doesn't have any fragrance in it, it is stupid. It does it. So Godward movement is a dynamic movement. Dynamic in the sense that the Godward movement inspires countless souls and go on inspiring through history. When a jewel is cleaned and polished, it shines. When the mind is purified through concentration, meditation, and spiritual discipline, it recovers its latent luminosity. Then whatever desire arises in this pure mind, that becomes its reality in a very short time. The will of a yogi becomes invincible by the force of purity of mind. What you are being told, that as mind gains purity in a successive process, it doesn't gain purity in all at once, but to the extent it gains purity, you find the role of your desire is of a different type. Firstly, you will not be desiring things that are tamasic, that are ugly, that are degrading. Your desiring process will be of a very advanced nature. Secondly, whatever you are desiring will be fulfilled faster and sometimes like a magic, depending upon your degree of. And you will find also adverse situations will not require too much effort to combat against adverse situations. They will simply evaporate. Hardly you are planning how to deal with it. You find it is not there by the time you come to catch the enemy. It's not there. So that's the role of purity of mind. And I'm going to hold off for now. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushti Vardhanam Urvaruku Bandhanan Mrityor Mukshiyamamitat. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Hari Om.